Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. It is your sis, your friend Adar, and you're listening to the Digital Sisterhood podcast. You guys are getting spoiled this time around because we are working extremely hard to bring you more stories. I know I'm probably biased when I say this because I always say this, but it's kind of getting better and better and better. I know that's it every season, but I promise you, we will keep telling stories that will keep tugging at your heartstrings and hitting you right in the soul. And I pray that you find it right when you need it most. This episode, we're challenging the norms of storytelling. Again and again, we're switching it up. And boy, what do we have in store for you? We bring you not just one guest, but two, with a collective story that needs to be heard. This mother-daughter duo shows us the kind of bond that you only really read about in storybooks, but one that we pray we all have. It's the kind that extends far past specific time or place. It is also the kind that lasts, the kind you already know Allah had planned. The story isn't just about one of them, but how both of their stories show you two halves to a whole. We're bringing you along through the parts you'll be biting your nails at how Ruwaida was able to find something priceless that she got to share with her daughter through it all, the one true source of her pocket of refuge. So Ruwaida is a British Pakistani woman who has lived her life not only knowing who Allah was, but she grew up in a household where Islam was not necessarily at the forefront. But as we all know, Allah is the best of writers, so certainly He had a plan for her. One that included being sent to Pakistan to live with her grandparents, where she lived and studied away from all that she knew, but the same one that would give her the key to getting through any and all adversaries that had come her way.
So I was 15 at the time, and in Pakistan they have this system, it's called matriculation, which is like GCSEs over here. I don't know what the equivalent will be in America. But yeah, so it's called, I think they call it 9th and 10th, it's matriculations system. And a mandatory subject in Pakistan is Islamic studies.
Wow.
So I was learning all these subjects like Pakistan studies, history of Pakistan, and Islamiyat. And then that was it. When I started reading about Islam, it just blew me away because I'd never known anything like it. I suppose as a teenager growing up, you always have those questions and what's my purpose? What's life about? I just don't get anything. Everybody's values are based on their own subjective ideas around their own upbringing, and we all make up our own morals and our own values as we go along, and they vary from person to person, and there's no real meaning to life. You know, I feel like I was just drifting and just in the system. And just when I started reading Seerah and learning about the religion, it was like, oh my gosh, where have I been all my life? This is just such a massive shock to my system. It was like everything made sense. It was like, there's hadith about charity and hadith about, don't look at people who've got more than you, look at people who've got less than you'll be content, and all these sort of things. And it was just completely changing my way of thinking and my way of seeing the whole world. And I was just so excited. It's like this discovery. Wow, this is so amazing. How could I? And I was just so excited. I was just sending letters then to my siblings. I was writing home and I was saying, guys, to my sister, we're something called Muslims. We're Muslims. And there's this guy and he's called Mohamud and he's our prophet. You need to get books. You need to learn this. You need to learn about hadith. And I'd send because in Pakistan, there'd be newspaper. There's the Pakistani newspaper called Jung, and there'd always be a hadith quote in it. And I'd be cutting them out of the newspaper and sending them in letters back to the UK to my siblings. And I think that sort of started an awakening in the family, because then my sister and my brother started looking into Islam. So I was in Pakistan for 6 months, and my grandparents, I suppose it was a blessing in disguise that had I not gone there, I would never have, I don't know, Allahu Alam, how I would have learned about Islam. But through studying, I was able to, through the education system, and be introduced to Islam. And then being in a Muslim country, I suppose I assumed everything was Islamic in Pakistan. So it's a learning when you first come into Islam. So I just thought everything here, everyone's Muslim, this Muslim country, everything Islam. Gradually, I learned that there's a difference between religion and culture, but that took time to start filtering. So I'd see the weddings and I'd just assume all the dancing and all the mixing and everything was Islamic because I was in a Muslim country, everyone's Muslim, so everything must be Muslim. So I just assumed that. But with time and I started to begin to filter what was Islamic and what was actually cultural. But in the early days, it was all one big mix. And I just thought it was all Islam. And I was really excited in the beginning. So I went to an Islamic bookshop and I picked up whatever books I could because I had this thirst. I've got to learn this religion. I've got to learn everything. And I remember picking up a book, 99 Names of Allah. And then I started reading it and it said, if you say this name so many times, this miracle will happen. And if you say this name so many, and I was thinking, oh my gosh, this religion is miraculous. I have to say this 30 times. And if a child ran away, they'll return home. Or it just had all this prescription of you read this will happen, you read that. And no one was there to guide me and explain to me that actually not all books are correct and stuff. So that took a learning. And I think the hadith that really struck with me was, the sermon of the Prophet ﷺ when he said, you follow the Quran and my example and you'll never go astray. So I think when I started just trying to stick to that, it filtered a lot of other stuff. And then I started questioning like authenticity and things like that. But that took time, and I think even now we're always coming across stuff and we sort of have to check it and see how it is. So after 6 months, I came back home because it was the summer holidays and I was really excited. And I was like, really wanted to bring change in the home. There was a lot of, we had a lot of alcohol at home and there was lots of bottles and liqueurs and all this and that. And I suppose I was a little bit too maybe, yes, in my approach. So one night while everyone was sleeping, I basically snuck downstairs and I emptied all the bottles down the drain and I poured everything away and I filled it with water and I put sort of the lids back on.
No.
Yeah. And it wasn't initially discovered. It took, I don't know, a few days before it got discovered what I'd done. And then it didn't go down.
I can only imagine.
Shall I say, it was a bit of an explosion in the home, really. And so basically I was kicked out. I was told,
Were you actually kicked out?
Yeah, I was literally kicked out the house, like, you got to go sort of thing. And I was out on the street with my bag thinking, what do I do now? Where do I go? I was just walking up the road and then I remembered an old childhood friend, Yugoslavian family.
Yeah.
And she was a single mother, this lovely Yugoslavian lady. And I kind of knocked on her door and I said, my mother's kicked me out of the house and I've got nowhere to go. Can I stay with you? And she was like, yeah, come in. She was really lovely, really welcoming. And then I think, I don't know, it was a few hours later, there was a knock on the door and I can't remember how it happened, but my sister turned up. She said, I'm coming. If you've been kicked out, then I've left. And you were right to have done what you did and you shouldn't have been thrown out of the house for it. So she ended up coming and then my siblings protested and said, you've been too harsh, She was actually in the right because as Muslims, we shouldn't be having alcohol in the home. So it was a bit of a coup in the home.
Wow.
And basically, my mother she sort of allowed me back home, shall I say. But then it didn't end there. I was going in the freezer and I was like, this is haram, that's haram, that's haram. Just pulling stuff out of the freezer and saying, we need to find where we can find halal meat. why have we got these burgers, beef burgers? They're not halal from some supermarkets and this and that. And I was just pulling everything out, throwing everything away. And yeah, I don't think my approach was, now when I look back, I should have probably been more gentle and a little bit more, but I think I was very young and very enthusiastic at the time. I was like 16 years old and I was just like, it's got to go. And everything I did, alhamdulillah, my siblings backed. So,
Wow.
they'd be like, yeah, she's right. She's right. Looking back now, I realized I was very sort of probably,
Yeah, but to
odd.
me is sort of miraculous, that you can be in a home that was living completely different life, and then one kid goes somewhere, inspired, awakened, and comes and completely turns the tides at home, and then also is capable of awakening their sibling. SubhanAllah, there's no amount of da'wah you can give someone except Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala inspires their heart to be open to it, right? Like, I could be giving da'wah to my neighbor all I want. If he's not open to it or she's not open to it, it will not happen. And so for you to come back and for your siblings to kind of awake themselves and then it's just extraordinary. And it must be so alarming for your stepdad and your stepmom to kind of take all in. Like, it's like, like these young people are extremely passionate about their faith. They're not passionate about their freedom. They're not passionate about staying out late or having this or having, but they're saying, why don't we live a life that's according to the truth? I cannot even imagine how that looked. Especially them being adults and being like, I don't even know what to say or how to say.
Yeah.
How did your mom deal with it? Like, obviously she understands. She's the one that sent you to Pakistan, right? What was she?
My mom wasn't.
What was she expecting was going to happen?
She was not happy. She was not happy. But then I had the support of my siblings and my stepdad. He didn't really say anything.
Wow.
He just, he was in the background. But I think I really got my mum's back up because I think this is what she'd left behind when she married my stepdad. And I was bringing something that she'd possibly buried. And I don't know for what reason. I've never had this conversation with her, but obviously for whatever reason, this had been something she had completely wiped out of the family. And when I came and tried to introduce all of this, I think it really got my mum's back up a lot. There was a lot of conflict between me and my mother. And I thought this time round, I'm in the UK, I'm not going back to Pakistan, basically. So I got admission in college. They accepted my matriculation. So it was in 6 months, but it was a 2-year course. So I'd done a very intensive 2-year course in 6 months in Pakistan. But over here, they accept it and enrolled me onto A-levels. And I thought I'll be starting my A-levels in September. But then I prepared, I'd done my interview for college and everything, got my admission and bought my stationery, my bag. I was all ready to go, chosen all my subjects. And then one day, basically, I was just hit with a bomb. My mother said, you're going back to Pakistan.
What?
And I was like, I don't want to go back to Pakistan. I've been to Pakistan. I spent my 6 months there and I'm going to college now. I want to do my A-levels. I've enrolled. I've chosen my subjects and my course is starting in September. My mother said, no, you have to go back. My mother has basically summoned me and that you don't go, my mother's going to disown me. I was just protesting. Please don't send me back. I don't want to go back to Pakistan. I don't want to live there. I want to be with my family. I want to stay here. And my mother said, you've got no choice. Your ticket's booked. You're going. We're taking you to the airport. And I was crying and and I prayed a lot.
At the time, like why the need for you to be separated that way?
So I know that I put my mother's back up a lot with all the changes I'd introduced in the home. I know she wasn't happy about that. I also know that because my mother had married my stepdad, she'd been estranged from her family, and I think sending me to Pakistan sort of built that bridge back up with her mother. I think I was a building block. And my grandparents at the time were 2 retired pensioners and their kids were all abroad. So my uncle was living in Dubai. One of my aunties was in Saudi Arabia, another auntie was in Malaysia, and my mother was in the UK. So they were on their own in Pakistan, my grandparents, and they're both retired. And I feel that I was a project for them, something for them to
focus on. Yeah.
Yeah. And I think that I was a building block between my mother and her mother in their relationship. So I don't know. I think a sacrifice, I feel that my mother, it's a bit hard to talk about.
Yeah, no. Because, you know, when, you know, we love our parents very much, but, you know, whatever, you know, the pain is more severe when it's between the child and their parent, especially when at the time you didn't understand why, you know, you were giving me up in my life.
And also I felt that there was no reason except for her own interests. So, yeah, so I remember when we were driving to the airport and we were on the motorway and the car broke down. And in my heart, I'd been praying to Allah, Ya Allah, please save me. I don't want to go. I don't want to go. I don't want to go. And the car broke down. And I thought, Allah's listened to me. Allah's listened. My dua has been answered. Alhamdulillah, alhamdulillah, alhamdulillah. And yeah, so the car broke down, missed the flight, but then unfortunately they booked me on the very next flight.
Oh.
Yeah. Anyway, get to the airport and I'm crying. I don't want to go. I've got this suitcase and my mother said, you haven't got a home to return to. I'm leaving you here at the airport. You either go in that terminal or you make your own way. You haven't got a home, basically. And I did cry at the airport and say, look, please, I don't want to go. Just want to come back home.
Yeah.
So my mother
oh my goodness.
My mother just slapped me really hard across my cheek and said, we're leaving you here. So I just remember walking through the terminal on my own, just tears. I don't think I could even see properly, and just getting on my flight and going back to Pakistan. It was really hard. Then when I got to Pakistan, my grandparents had got me admission in college there and they chose subjects for me. I did say, I like science. I really enjoy science. And they said, no, you're not doing science, because in Pakistan, you either choose an art college or a science college. But my grandparents chose arts for me. No, you're going there. So nothing I said mattered. My voice didn't matter. They chose what I'd be studying and what I'd be doing. And then a few months down the line, basically a marriage proposal had come for me. And my grandparents thought it was suitable for me. And I said, I feel like I'm a bit too young to get married. I don't want to get married. But my grandmother said, you're very lucky anyone will even choose to marry you. You're very, very lucky that you've got a proposal, because basically, your mother's married to a white man and you're damaged goods. So you should be lucky that anyone will even consider you.
Oh my God. Oh, Hasbi Allah wa ni'mal wakeel. I'm so sorry, Dua. This is the difficulty I've ever heard one for a young person to survive. Because like I could imagine now you had daughters your age, like you see like what that age looks like, and you see how innocent they are, and then to remind yourself, I went through all of that when I was that age.
That's been the hardest thing, is being a mother and thinking, how did they do that to me? I couldn't dream of doing that to my daughters when they were 15. Send a 15-year-old to another country. I mean, I won't even send my 15-year-old to another city. And I'm thinking, you just put me on a plane on my own and sent me to like this country. Yeah, so really having children made me relive my life through every stage of their life and compare that actually at that age, this is what happened to me. And I couldn't get my head around it. Like I could not even fathom. I would never, ever have done that to my children. And yeah, that's what's really hard, is I just didn't have a voice, and it was never, I had a voice, but it wasn't heard, and it meant nothing. And nothing I wanted meant anything. It was, we've decided this for you. We've decided. And who do you think you are? You're just damaged goods. So you should be so lucky somebody even will consider you. Yeah. And then my whole family turned up for this wedding. And I told my mother, and I said again, help, I don't want to do this. I don't want to get married. I'm too young and I don't want to get married. And then the family started saying, we don't know what's wrong with her. We think someone's done black magic to her. Why she's saying this? There's something wrong with her. And then my mother said basically the same thing, is that the decision's been made and you're not coming back to the UK. We've got your passport. You're not coming back to the UK. You've got nowhere else to go. You have to marry this person or it's the streets. And that's it.
How did you cope? Like, when you were alone and you realized this is going to happen. Like, some of the most difficult times, like I hope on, obviously, to the knowledge I know of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, what were you holding on to at that age?
That's the only thing, is always having my connection with Allah. When I had no one to talk to, I was always able to talk to Allah. He was always there. That connection, that's
what
always,
does that look like?
That's always been consistent in my life. That's always been my comfort. That's always been my pillar. Normally people get strength from support from family, but my family were the ones that were the cause of my problems.
Your pain.
Yeah, my pain and my situation that I was in. I was not able to have a childhood. My life was just being constantly dictated to me. And what I had always to fall back on was Allah. Was my connection with Allah, talking to Allah all the time, making du'as to Him all the time. And I couldn't have done more to stop that situation from happening. And I think at some point I just thought, I'm trying my best, but maybe this is the Cadar. This is the Cadar that's written for me. And yeah, I remember when I signed my nikah and I was left on my own in the room and it was just my brother and my cousin. And I remember saying to them, I've signed my life away. And I remember that feeling of imprisonment. I just remember that feeling that I'm trapped. This paper, this nikah is my trap, my sentence. I'm sentenced now.
I can't put into words the type of betrayal that I must have felt. To have your voice taken from you for the ones that had given it to you. The ones that were meant to protect you and guide you when you were small. The ones that were your first friends and companions in this life. Being a young adult with your whole life ahead of you, that level of betrayal is something even I get choked up thinking about it. What gives me peace of mind, though, is that throughout the story, we hear about pockets of refuge that Allah puts in our hands. Things only Allah could put there. So come along with us as we listen in and discover just when and where they got placed. Reda was soon granted one of her first pockets of refuge, something unexpected that made her circumstances bearable, something that would eventually become Sadaqah Jariyah, to Allah first, and then to Reda's heart second. So you get married.
I get married and I kind of then came to terms with, this must have been written for me. It must have been written for me. My family, obviously, they all just came, my nikah, my marriage was done. They all came back to the UK. I was left to get on with it in Pakistan. And I had a hadith book. This is 200 hadith book, which is, to be honest, even to this day, that is I love that book. To this day, I love that book. That's been my go-to, it's always been with me from that time. And there were hadith about marriage. And I just thought, okay, if I based my life on this and my marriage on this, things will be good for me. And I remember saying to my husband that got this lovely hadith book and let's learn these hadith about marriage together and let's, build our marriage based on this. And it didn't go down well. It was kind of mocked and ridiculed. I sort of accepted this is my qadr now and I have to, do the best and have sabr and do the best with my situation as I can. And I had my children, and
what was it like becoming a mother during that time?
Life-changing. It was just life-changing. Or having my first child, it was just the most incredible thing to become a mother and to have this beautiful little child, this little gift, this miracle from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. I couldn't thank Allah enough. I was making up my own Islamic songs and nursery songs for her. And, and she just became my everything, my world. My child became my world, and focusing on my children. They just became everything. Nurturing, raising them was everything to me. That meant the world to me.
When you think about the things that she taught you deen-wise, because you said she was really passionate about it, like, what were some of the favorite things that you learned from her at a really young age?
A really young age, wow. Honestly, like, I don't think there was ever a time where Islam was like her coming up for breath, right? The Quran was her coming up for breath. I remember she'd always tell us about her introduction to Islam and just her introduction to understanding how life could be. She would always talk about this 200 hadith. It was a book on 200 hadith, right? And she was brought up in a very, very Western household. And when she went over to Pakistan, she found this hadith book, and it talked about Allah and it talked about the Prophet ﷺ. And it was a very, like I say, our first exposure was very much through justice, right? And it was that which she talked about how protective Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is, or stories of the Prophet and their difficulties, and really like the laws that we have comfort by as women. But again, it wasn't something that she had the freedom in at that time. When she eventually did get divorced, that came out a lot more. She'd go and take us on a walk and ground her feet in the mud. And, there's this song that she would always sing to us, Allah made you, Allah made me, Allah made the birds that sing in the tree, So there was this whole holistic element going on. And we just genuinely had this awareness of a loving God that produces all these amazing, beautiful things around us, but also a protective God. That's how Islam was genuinely introduced to us growing up.
First of all, I just want to say how beautiful that is, especially teaching women that, because I know that you're a household of like 5 girls. And in a world that's made us to feel inherently unsafe, I love that she reminded you that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is your ultimate protector.
Yeah.
And your wakil, and the one that balances the scales, even when the world, doesn't balance the scales for us, right? Women are like treated poorly in this world, but to be reminded that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will always balance the scales. It's just a beautiful thing to know. It's like she prepped you for what to come.
Yeah.
And how you should see, and I think that's really beautiful. Sorry, that's so beautiful. I have a question. I always, when I met your daughter, Du'a, I thought her name was so beautiful. I was like, I want to ask your mom why she named you that. Like, even before, like, I asked Du'a, like, about, her story, I just thought it was so beautiful that she named you, supplication. But, like, I to me, Du'a is, like, very powerful. It changed my life.
Yeah.
To name a human being around prayer sounds like a story to me.
Yeah. Yeah. So initially when I got married, I don't know if this is a Pakistani thing, but even like 1 month after marriage, people are asking if you're expecting, basically. So it was like within the first month. And I don't know, I feel like there was this pressure on me, this expectation. And it took a while for me to conceive Du'a, basically. And that was a really hard experience because, this is what now I'm waiting for. This is the next stage of my life, is to become a mother and to have a family and to raise my daughter. And it wasn't happening for me. And I'd be like monitoring my days and all the rest of it. And when it wouldn't happen, it'd be very disappointing. And 1 month, 2 months, then 1 year, 2 years. So it took a little a while before I conceived, and it was just a very, very difficult period, and I'd miscarried as well. And yeah, I remember I'd look at people with holding babies, holding their children, and I'd be really yearning for that. I'd sort of accepted that maybe it's not going to happen for me, and then we decided to go down the adoption route. In Pakistan, and so we thought we're gonna go down that route and get the ball rolling. And then lo and behold, unexpectedly, I'm having all these symptoms where, I thought it was some sort of a stomach bug, and I'm just vomiting, and I didn't know what's going on with me. And then someone just suggested, why don't you get tested? And I thought, well, it's not going to be anything. Got tested, and it came back positive, and I didn't believe the results. And I said, no, they must have got it wrong. So I think I got tested 3 times before I actually believed I was expecting. So dua was very much the answer of my duas for years. She was that answer for me. So, I don't think there was a more befitting name really for her.
Dua was more than just a fitting name. It was the truth. Dua was what Ruwaid had held on to for so long, the vehicle, the catalyst for her pockets of refuge, and her source of strength. Back to what she said earlier in her interview, her kids were her sanctuary in a situation that was forced upon her. She reclaimed her voice upon becoming a mother, to synthesize the words of her Lord she had come to know and love. And through their Lord, they too could know the sanctuary she herself sought.
The whole process from separation to divorce, I was learning who I am for the first time. What do I like? What do I know about myself? Because my life had been so dictated that I didn't even know what I like and dislike. It was a rediscovery of me for the first time, me discovering who I am as a person. And that's taken years. That's not an overnight thing. It's taken me years to figure out who I am, because when you've always been dictated to, you learn to not think for yourself.
Of course, divorce is generally disliked in the first place. But divorce is also halal, because some people are just not meant to come back together. Some people just cannot and will not reconcile. Some people, it is better for them to separate. Why would Allah wish for His servants to suffer when marriage is supposed to be mawadda and rahmah, right? We hear from Ruwaida herself how after the calamity of her first marriage, she was granted yet another pocket of refuge by the means of her divorce, that she and her kids could properly and finally heal.
I don't know. I just felt like maybe Allah is giving me an opportunity and a chance, because I've never been in, I was in a marriage, but it was a loveless marriage. There was never an emotional connection.
Yeah.
It didn't exist. It wasn't there. And I felt that maybe I'm entitled to have that experience and have a marriage and have something for me. I think because of my experience before and having not a great marriage, basically having someone that was loving towards you, respected your views, respected your opinions, someone that was leading in salah and you and your children praying behind. I'm like, these
It's
are
a dream,
a dream, like, oh my gosh, someone who I could talk about deen with and, not be shut down, and, who was valuing my opinions. And from what my experience was before, this was like the dream. This was like complete opposite, it was like, oh, subhanallah, this just felt amazing, that someone that my children weren't afraid of as well, that played with them and enjoyed outings and going on hikes and enjoyed all the things that I enjoyed and we enjoyed as a family and we could do together as a family. It was a very great experience. Basically, what I can say is that the problem with the whole thing was the foundation it was built on. The foundation it was built on was a big lie right from the outset. And then, so the narrative that I was given was that married to first cousin is a forced marriage, but then the cousin also, it was so hard to explain this. So His father had died. So his mother had married his father's brother, his uncle. His mother becomes a second wife because the uncle's already married and has got 2 daughters. He was married to his stepdad's daughter. He said he was sent to Pakistan, told he was going on a holiday. When he arrived there, his stepdad took him to his father's grave and cried on his father's grave, saying, "Don't dishonor the family. Don't bring shame to the family. Wedding invitations have already gone out to marry his daughter, basically." So I really resonated with his story, and he's had the added complication of it being his father-in-law was actually married to his mother. So, and actually they had a child from that marriage who is a sibling to both husband and wife. He basically presented that he's had his talaq, he's divorced. The whole, everybody could see it was incompatible. And the divorce is done, the Islamic, there's, that's it, it's irrevocable. There is no marriage, but he's still got to go down the English legal marriage route. And that's going to take time because that is a process, which I went through myself. So I know that's a long, these things do take time. And that also it's going to cost because court costs, and there's other things like access to children. Like you were saying, she doesn't let me see my children. I've got to go through the courts and resolve contact, get access to my children. There's also financial money that they've both in the house. So there was like financial settlements, court costs, the English divorce, all this needed finalizing. So he said, it's going to take time and these issues are going to be, I have to work through them through the courts. But then we're going to have this amazing life. Be patient with me and persevere with me. And, we're going to have this incredible life at the end. But these things will take time to resolve. So, and I understood because of my own, situation and what I'd gone through. It'd been very difficult. So I understood there was financial implications and all the rest of it. And, he was unemployed at some point. And, at that time as well, when he met me, I knew, financially he wasn't in a good place. He was like, he didn't have a great job and all the rest of it. And that they were in a lot of debt, of debt that they, built up throughout their marriage, basically. But then I thought, at the end of the day, this is their situation and, I'll be patient because, it will get resolved. And along the road, he would show me certain letters from courts or solicitors' letters and give me updates here and there that now this has happened. We went into court on this day and this has been decided. Now this has happened. This has been things that were happening. So I was always being told things are happening and this is happening and that's happening along the way. But certain things he'd start saying which didn't make sense. So, for example, he'd go to the masjid and when he'd come back, I'd just say, "Oh, how was the masjid?" And he'd say, "Why are you suspicious? Why are you being suspicious?" And I was like, "I just asked you how the masjid was." I didn't understand it. And he was saying to me, "You're being suspicious," or anything like when he came back from squash and how did it go? Suspicious, you're being controlling, you're being possessive. Kept hearing these sort of things. And it wasn't making any sense to me because I'm just thinking, I'm not asking anything out of the ordinary. And he keeps telling me that I'm being suspicious and I'm being controlling and I'm being possessive when I wasn't. It wasn't making sense. So these little things started happening where he was accusing me of things and it didn't make sense to me. And it was like, I'd avoid asking any questions because his response would be such that I think if I ask that, he's just going to say this. And then sometimes I wouldn't hear anything and I'd say, some update on the situation, what's happening. And he'd get quite loud and aggressive. So I'd get very scared that my children are going to hear him. So I'd diffuse the situation. So I'd sort of back off and think. So I'd be scared to ask, like, what's going on, because at the end of the day, I'm in limbo land here. I'm still waiting for all these matters to be resolved. And I want to have this, he was always saying right from day one, I've had children from a loveless marriage and you've had children from a loveless marriage. And I would love the experience for us to have a child together. a love child. So I'm thinking time is ticking on, and my age, I'm not getting any younger. If this is going to happen, things need to be resolved. You know, I want everything done and dusted before we have our child. And then it got physical as well. And unfortunately, like my daughters saw him being aggressive and physical, which is really, you know, hard on them. And I've tried to sort of protect my children, but unfortunately they saw and experienced things that I wouldn't have obviously ever wanted them to go through, because this was supposed to be the good marriage, the good situation. So yeah, then I conceived Khadija, my child.
So it's mainly when my mum got pregnant, actually. That's when things really started to get weird. So it was like we're coming home and it's feeling really cold. You know, in the evenings we'd sit together and we'd watch watch TV or something. And, you know, we'd all have our routine, you know, like me being the older, like I'd sit with my mum and my stepdad and we'd watch TV, and then everyone would go to sleep, and then we'd wake up and then do the school run. Everyone was doing the normal stuff, but it was just feeling really, really cold and really kind of like something's about to happen, but it's not happened yet. That's how it was generally feeling.
And he's completely changed. His persona just completely changed, and he was just coming out with things all the time, just strange comments like everything's going to get sorted out, but in a way as if it was a vengeful, I'm going to sort you out thing. I don't know, there's just strange things happening. One day I remember feeling noticing at the nape of my neck, a chunk of my hair had been cut out. And it was just...
What?
Yeah, a chunk of my hair had been cut out from the back of my head, nape of my neck.
Yeah.
And it was a clean cut, because, you know, if you cut a chunk of hair, it's blunt, isn't it? A whole bunch.
Yeah.
It was literally a bunch of my hair had been cut out from the back of my head. So weird stuff. And then, someone came to my house and he'd been showing me legal documents. And he'd show me them. And then when I'd start reading, say, a few lines, he'd quickly snatch them out of my hands. And he said, you don't need to see it in that much detail. And he'd take it out of mine. He said, well, and then he's like, right, my British divorce has come. He showed me his legal British divorce and decree and all this stuff. And all along he was crying the poverty line, that I haven't got money because I'm paying solicitors' fees and court costs. And, you know, I was financially looking after my children, bringing them up and thinking, helping him build up his life.
And still, Allah guided the right people towards her. You see, this is the thing about Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, right? When you think everything has run out, you're in complete darkness, right? You're just about to fall into despair. Boom. That's when Allah arrives. And where it was dark, light begins to trickle in. Not for a single moment did he not have a plan for her, not even for a second.
One day, someone visited me and we were just sitting in the kitchen having a cup of tea. And she mentioned that his ex-wife had purchased the house next door, and like a semi-detached house, and bought the attached house next door and knocked it all into one big mansion and done all this renovation. And that made no sense to me, because I thought if these guys had been going through divorce all these years, and this woman had a very basic job working in a nursery, she was, I thought that's not possible. How could she have been able to purchase this house and convert it into this huge massive, it didn't make sense. So it was like, something doesn't add up here.
And was it actually next door?
No, not to me. It was her next door house.
And this woman is their neighbor?
This woman was somebody who we a mutual person that came to me, and she said, this. And I thought that doesn't make sense, because when I was going through courts, I know what the costs are, and also I knew what job she did, and I thought, how could she possibly afford to do that? So, and I knew some things, you know in your gut, something's just not right here. Something's just not making sense here. So, I remember I was just praying and I just said, because I felt something's not right. And I said, Ya Allah, reveal what's hidden. I made this dua. It was at Maghrib. I remember just making dua saying, Allah, reveal what's hidden. And I don't know, the next day I woke up in the morning and I don't know where this idea just popped in my head that can I do a land registry search, and find out about who's purchased this house? And I just went online and I didn't even know I could do this. And I think I Googled it and it all came up. And basically, they jointly purchased this property together. And my friend came round and he was apparently away on work at that time. And then he just phoned, saying, I'm coming home and, just very casual conversation. What have you cooked and what's happening? And I basically said, have you and her bought a house together? And he said, no, who's told you that? I said, have you both bought a house together? And he said, don't be ridiculous. Why would I buy a house with her? Why would I have anything to do? We're divorced. Why would I buy a house with her next door? I couldn't speak. I gave the phone to my friend and basically she said, you have bought a house with her. And he said, no, it's a lie. Who's told you that? And my friend said, we've got the document downloaded in front of us from the land registry. And he just went, oh.
Wow.
It still didn't make sense to me. They're divorced. They're Islamically divorced. They're British legally divorced. But what is going on here? Anyway, then he comes and he gives me this elaborate story that she wasn't letting me see my children. And then I started seeing my children and she was sending messages through my son. He said, I never spoke to her. I never even, I'm divorced from her. I never crossed the threshold. The day I left that home, I never went back. And basically she sent a message through my son. My son said to me that the house next door has come up for sale and my son needed a bedroom because he hasn't got a bedroom to study. And all she needs is a signature. That's all from me. And she's doing everything, but she just needed my signature. I don't know how he dressed it all up. And, I've got no involvement in this house. It's all hers. She just, couldn't have got the mortgage or whatever without my signature. Or it is something along those lines. And I swear I'm telling the truth, I'm still very shocked and, but he's making out as if there's no connection and that he's not financially done anything. It was just some sort of signature that he needed in order for her to acquire this property.
During this time, when you're figuring out all these revelations, did you start thinking about, because you mentioned how you found your haircut.
Yeah.
When did you start connecting the dots that something much larger was going on?
It was just confusing. It's just lots of weird things happening, weird things that nothing made sense and things were just confusing. He was saying really weird stuff. He was calling me the devil. He was saying you're possessed. Look at me really weird, saying, there's something done to you, you're possessed, you've got the devil in you, and just really weird stuff he was coming out with. And on top of that, this house thing happened, and it was just, everything was really weird and really my head was just confused.
All over.
All over the place. And on top of that, I was expecting, and all the way through the pregnancy, he was making my life hell. If I wanted to buy a pushchair, it was wouldn't let me do anything. And also he made me keep my pregnancy secret. He was saying, you can't tell anybody. And that was really difficult. I'm getting big. My friends are seeing this bump and he's forcing me to keep silent. And, they're asking questions and I'm having to sort of skirt around it. And I'm not allowed to say that I'm pregnant to anyone, which was really difficult and really put a lot of pressure. And saying things like, you've trapped me as well. It's what? I couldn't make sense of the things he was saying to me and the things he was coming out of it. None of it was making sense. And then basically I came across these emails from builders and his emails about quotations of building work and stuff on this. And then I said to him, you said you've got no involvement in this property. What's this? And he was actually said for the first time, I can't lie my way out of this.
Wow.
He said, I actually can't think of a lie for this. And he said, it's all your fault. I had to lie to you because you would never have agreed to what I wanted. So cut a long story short, he said that he was in this marriage and his stepfather had said to him, if you divorce my daughter, I divorce your mother.
Oh my God.
So his stepfather, him and his wife had all sat down and come to an agreement that this marriage is bad, but the solution for the marriage is for him to find a woman, a second wife, and a woman that he can be happy with, and that will solve their marital problems.
Wow.
And he said, I knew you would never have agreed to what I wanted and what my family we'd all decided. So I had to lie to you. It's your fault. How is
it your fault?
So basically, the agreement between him and his wife to solve their marital issues, because their marriage was incompatible, was that he have a second wife and that will fix their problems. And financially, the money goes to her because she's family.
Oh my God.
So all that duration, they were building their lives together. And he kept a double life going. So he was getting what he needed to keep both sides happy, his family happy. Because she was from back home and to her, divorce was a no-go. It was, she was happy with him to have another person, but you don't divorce me, that's it. And I was that target. And then all these solicitors' letters were all fake. These court documents with court stamps on them were all fake. The divorce papers were fake. His talaq was fake. It had been the plan to find someone to solve their marital problems. So I'd been deceived literally from the word go. And me getting pregnant became a massive spanner in the works for them because as long as it was exploitation, everyone was happy. But having a link and a connection, suddenly that was a problem. And that's where my hair got cut when I was pregnant. God knows what was done to my hair. And then anyway, when I found out everything, that was it. Get out, basically. Just go was my response. Just go. And it was extremely difficult for me. Yeah.
Can't imagine what you're going through in the middle of your pregnancy.
Yeah.
At what stage you were in at that point and to have that kind of stress. For Dua and her family, the adversities kept going. Kept flowing. And it never really stopped. A husband's tower of lies had started falling apart. Let alone in the middle of her pregnancy, the ones that were around were left to pick up the pieces. How could she build back her home in preparation for the arrival of this baby? What on earth was going to happen? Where was it all truly coming from? Allah has a way of revealing what is hidden when you least expect it, right? With dua again, as the vehicle and as the catalyst of everything, just as she did before, Allah will reveal something hidden, but this time, literally.
What happened was my friend, she'd had a baby, and this was 6 months before I was 6 weeks before I was about to have Khadija, 6 weeks. So, because our children are 6 weeks apart. So I had this plant outside my house in a pot. It was a tree, and it was basically not thriving. It was almost dead. And in the back of my mind, I was always thinking that, I've got to deal with this. I've got to get rid of this plant and I've got to replace it. So that was just a gardening. I like my gardening and stuff. And that had been a planned thought in my mind that I have to do at some point. But yeah, my friend had her child and I thought I'm going to go and visit her because she's just had the baby. So I went to the shops. I went to a supermarket to buy clothes and a card and a little gift to take to her. And when I went to the supermarket, outside the supermarket, there was these beautiful olive trees. And I thought, oh, that looks so perfect for that pot. And I was kind of in two minds because I hadn't gone with the intention of buying a plant. I went with the intention of buying baby clothes for my friend. So as I was walking around the aisle, I was still sort of thinking about it. And I think the price was £20. And I was thinking, I was in two minds, shall I, or, shall I, shan't I sort of thing. Anyway, I decided to get it. And I had the baby clothes and baby gifts, went to the tills. And when I scanned it, it came up as 20 pence.
Wow.
And I was a bit shocked because I thought it's £20. It's come up as 20 pence. So I called the assistant, the shop person, and I said, this is scanned up as 20 pence. And she said, I'll call the manager. So she called the manager of the shop and he said, they are £20, but it's come up for you as 20 pence and we will honor that.
Wow.
We will honor that. So basically, how could I not buy this?
You can't. You have to.
You
got a lottery
and
deal.
I thought, honestly, Allah's on my side today. I have to get this,
Absolutely. That is yours.
So then I did my shopping. I came back home and I laid the plant pot on the side. And I started removing the soil around the plant that was in there. It was like a tree that was already in that pot. It was a big pot. As I'm removing the soil, now what I had done at the base of the pot as well is there were some flowers. I had to take all of them out. And as I'm digging out this soil, I suddenly see this egg buried in my pot.
An egg?
A whole complete egg. And I don't know how, I just knew this was black magic. I just knew. I planted that tree and I knew there was no egg in there. I'm the one who planted it. Somebody has put this egg and buried it in this pot. I just knew. I knew this is black magic. And I instantly phoned my friend, one of my friends who's like very practicing. And I said, there's this egg in my pot. And I know something's wrong. I just know it. And she said that, I don't know, she'd come across a situation where they use an egg in order to try and do black magic on it to induce a miscarriage.
Hasbi Allahu wa ni'mal wakeel.
So she said, Ruqya has to be done. And this has to be removed. And I was like, I don't know what to do. I don't know how to go about it. She told me like who to get into touch with, this sister who's a very learned sister, scholar, that, you need to contact her. And I contacted that sister and she said, just don't touch anything. I'm going to come to the house. I'm going to do the ruqya.
Wow.
I'm going to remove it. You don't worry about anything. So then this
woman.
Yeah, this sister came. I think it was two sisters came and they disposed of it. And I don't know how they did the ruqya and they did whatever, sort of needed to be done. And then I was always playing Surah Baqarah around the house and protection surahs for me and stuff. So yeah, this weird stuff was being done and I know where it came from.
You see, this part of the story gave me chills. You know why it gave me chills? Black magic is more than just a cautionary tale. There's more than just sihr that happens to people that your people, their people know. Matter of fact, there are probably numerous people around you that you might even see on a regular basis that is being tested with this, right? It is more than just a campfire story that you hear about people do. Man, this stuff ruins people's lives. This destroys their lives, right? Like, and I say that because even I know people in my life who are currently being tested with this. And when I think about them, wallahi, I cry because it's a different kind of suffering. It's really an isolating and alien suffering because there isn't any protest groups for this. There isn't like a public community. Like, there isn't like the kind of support you think any sickness or catastrophe would create. Oftentimes, people who struggle with this kind of feel very alone, so alone. And Dua, you can only imagine the shock, you know, like it really came from left field. But for Dua herself, like, my question naturally was, what did she see?
She was absolutely devastated. She was completely distraught. I remember I was there, and when he said it, she came to me, she told me, and I just remember thinking, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala really loves my mum because he tests the ones that he loves. And I'd always told her that this is a huge test. We're going to get through it. And all I kept thinking was, what's next? What is next? How is she going to cope with this baby? And those 8 years, she was happy. She was so happy. So he leaves, and my mum went into this massive depression. She developed gestational diabetes as well. She wasn't very well. And she was 9 months pregnant. And she had a little bit of support, but she didn't really talk about it. My mum didn't talk about what she was feeling. She just would lay there. And it was just like, she's just completely blank. It was a really horrible time.
You know, it transpired that they'd made this whole narrative that I was some devil-possessed, evil woman that needed to be punished. And I was a husband stealer, and all this stuff had been like, all this slander and all these allegations had been made about me. And a lot had been said. And I discovered a lot of allegations upon allegations. And he actually told his friend, he said, you know, when I visit my children, or I visit my mother, or I visit anyone, any of my family, they're constantly accusing Roida of stuff. They're constantly accusing her. He said, even if my son failed at school, somehow they managed to twist the blame onto her. And he said, I'd walk in the door and they'd start blaming her. He goes, they blamed her for the weather. He goes, blamed her for everything. To the point I believed she was the devil. I believed she had no good in her. And I was slandered, and things were left outside my door, threatening messages that I'd open my door and find them outside my house. Stuff left on my windscreen of my car, threatening messages and stuff. And I remember once just crying and in a lot of distress. And I remember just saying, oh, Allah guide me. And I remember just opening the Quran. You know, I don't know if you've ever done, just open it random, not on a specific place, but you just literally just open it. The ayah that was open before me was, woe to every slanderer and backbiter who has gathered wealth and counted it. They think that their wealth shall make them last forever. Nay, verily, they shall be thrown into the fire.
Hasbi Allahu wa ni'mal wakeel.
And honestly,
that is, oh my God, I'm getting chills.
Because that's what they did.
That's exactly what they did.
They were gathering wealth, and they were getting out of their debts, building their lives, and they spent the whole duration slandering and backbiting me. This is what they did. They found somebody that was what they needed to build everything.
Wow. Oh my God, what was it like to feel like Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala responded to you?
I can't even describe.
It's like as close as you can get to a wahi. That is as close as you'll ever even get to a wahi itself.
I can't even describe how that felt. I just can't. It was just, you know,
that awareness.
The tears and the sincerity with which I opened the Quran, saying, Ya Allah, I need you, Allah, help me, Allah. And, it was just there right in my face. Allah saying it just straight in my face. And it was like word for word, Allah talking to me.
So it literally, if I was to set it for you, she would have friends constantly coming over. She didn't tell that many people. I was like, I need help here. And these are women who my mum managed to become friends with, where they all had this general sense of, we've got trauma, but we can get ourselves out of trauma and we can get ourselves out of bad situations. And my mum would bring out the strength in other women. She had this tremendous capacity to be able to, very, very sociable person. So when life was good and she'd made friends, she made genuine friendships with people, because it was like, I'll carry you, you carry me, and let's get through this life together. These are the kind of friends she made. So during this
Allahu Akbar,
incredibly turbulent time, I remember a particular friend coming, she just sat there and she just held my mum. And you don't have to say much. Your heart feels the love, I'm here. You've got people, we're here. Allah sends people that you need in that time, And it was just as simple as just a turning up, a showing up.
SubhanAllah, that's what women are. They are healers. Longtime listeners will know that this is one of the biggest, maybe our favorite messages we have to deliver, no matter what form it can take. It is a thing, it is a gift that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has given us. And that's why, like, the dynamic of a household is vital, because we're all about repair. You know what I mean? Like, what is family for? Except to help you pick up the pieces, right? And imagine how much Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala loves to see that. A household who work together, who strive, and who worship Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala alone, and who rely and trust Him only. Just imagine how beautiful that is to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's gaze. Anyways, there's nothing like it. There's nothing more repairing than nisa, than women. Like, you know what I mean? Like, literally, when a woman gives birth, 40 days, you're with who? Your mother. With the women. 40 days, right? You're just bleeding profusely. You're in pain. You're just all over the place, right? You can't stand, yet you need to be there for your child, right? Women come together in community to heal her, to make her stand, so she can carry the ummah on her back. Because what else are women doing when they're birthing and they're raising and they're teaching? They're building the world of tomorrow. And what about female friendships? Bro, like authentic and genuine female friendships, wallahi, can feel so healing. And for those who don't have it, I ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to grant you righteous companions. These are one of the blessings Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala can provide someone. When people say, how do I create this community of women that is like nourishing? Ask Allah. You think we all just got this? Allah blesses you with it. So supplicate, raise your hand, ask Allah, Ya Rabb. Until then, I could be your sister. Until then, I could be in your ear. Inshallah, you will all have the companionships you've always wanted. If there's one thing to take away from the story, it's simple. If you were paying attention, is look how Dua transformed their lives. Look at it. Take a hard look. Dua is a catalyst for good. It is a vehicle for which blessings come from. For sustenance, for care, for you to have your own pockets of refuge wherever you are in life right now. You're not alone. You've never been. Allah sometimes closer to you than your jugular vein. So don't be afraid to turn to Him, even if you feel like you've turned away from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. That dua can bring you back in the way that you always prayed and hoped for. So yeah, I hope you guys enjoyed the episode just as much as I did. Thank you to Umm Dua for this story. Oh my goodness. I love you guys. Wallahi, may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala bless your home. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala make you guys an example of a righteous household. When I think about the dua al-Zakariya, رَبَّنَا هَبْ لَنَا مِنْ أَزْوَاجِنَا وَذُرِّيَّاتِنَا وَجَعَلْنَا الْمُتَّقِينَ إِمَامًا. When I think about that dua, when I think about like a righteous home, like a good home, you know what I mean? Like, that's what it is. That's what you guys have. I'm just wow. May Allah grant all of us that if we don't have it, and if we do have it, may Allah make all of our homes righteous. Say Ameen. Ameen. All right, guys. You guys already know the stitches. I will see you guys next week in your ears. Say it with me now, in your speakers, telling you a good story. Before I jet, I have to give my credits where credits are due. I love to give a shout out to our lead producer this season, Khweya. You did such an incredible job. I can't wait for people to listen to the remaining episodes. Wow. 10 out of 10. I also have to give a shout out to our episode producers, Khweya and Lamisah Jahan, as well as our production manager, Maaheen Khan, our writers, Naomi and Lamisah, our sound design, Youssef and Yahya Arfouai. Thank you guys so much for your work on this episode. Our marketing and design, Wasima, Farah, and honorable mentions, as always. Shout out to Safia, Noura A Sheikh, and Sawsan Abdillahi. I'll see you guys next week in your ears, in your speakers, telling you a good story.
Sisterhood.